So long awaited, now postponed. Alex Salmond will not be appearing before MSPs here at Holyrood tomorrow. Tuesday's toast, as one MSP put it.
Alex Salmond is saying, although he's happy to testify, he'll only do so if the committee publishes all of his submissions. The committee says it's published a great deal of his submissions, but Alex Salmond is holding out. He wants all of them published.
Mr. Salmond clearly wants his story out there, unedited, uppercase, red letters. The former First Minister, now widely seen as wanting revenge against his own party, former allies and friends, on two fronts. First, his successful judicial review, which proved the SNP government had mishandled sexual harassment allegations against him. Second, his acquittal on all sexual misconduct charges in the subsequent court case, which could have ruined him.
Do you refute that?
Next week, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon will answer questions at the Holyrood Committee. She was asked today if she'd ever misled the courts over allegations against Alex Salmond.
I refute that, absolutely. And I look forward to getting the opportunity at long last to appear before the Committee of Inquiry. I very much hope that will be next week, assuming they don't postpone it again. And let me be very clear, I am willing to answer all and any questions put to me by that committee, including on the topic that you have just asked me.
Does it matter? Well, if it was proven that the First Minister had misled the courts, that would be by custom a resignation matter in normal times. But it remains hypothetical, and these are not normal times. Enter Peter Murrell this morning, Nicola Sturgeon's husband and SNP Chief Executive.
Can we stop because one voice is interfering with another?
Called for a second time to the committee. Some MSPs feel he's been evasive about what he knew of meetings between his wife and Alex Salmond.
When I asked you, I said to you, you were not in the House at the time, and you said, I was not at home during either meeting. That was a false statement. Yes or no?
I refuse.
Mr. Murrell.
Yes or no, Mr. Murrell? It's not a difficult question.
Well,
was that a false statement?
Mr. Fraser, please let Mr. Murrell answer. Mr. Murrell.
I have no idea how long the meeting lasted. I wasn't here.
Peter Murrell repeatedly denied giving the committee false answers under oath.
So just as the SNP is riding high in the polls, just as it looks set for a strong performance in the elections in May, and just as a second independence referendum looks on the cards, the party appears bent on attacking itself. And this is far from the only front.
In recent days, Joanna Cherry, a major SNP force in Westminster, sacked from the frontbench team in a row over transgender issues.
No debate can be a cover for transphobia.
That forced the First Minister into damage limitation, a video message to the party faithful.
Transphobia is wrong and we must treat it with the zero tolerance.
She'll hope that issue, like the committee hearings, can soon be put behind her. Alex Salmond evidently has other ideas. Alex Thompson, Channel 4 News, Holyrood.
And following her departure, Joanna Cherry tweeted that despite hard work, results and a strong reputation, she'd been sacked from the SNP front bench. I'm joined now by SNP MP Kenny McCaskill, who served in Alex Salmond's cabinet as Justice Secretary when he was First Minister. Mr McCaskill, parliamentary officials say that Alex Salmond would have been free tomorrow to give a lengthy opening statement and have 4 hours to answer questions. Why wasn't that enough?
Well, I think the Scottish Parliament is supposed to pride itself on openness, transparency and accountability. I think the situation within the Scottish Parliament is becoming farcical. He was being told that he would have to take the oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, and yet it was becoming quite clear that some of the issues that he would wish and indeed would require to comment on, he might very well find himself being prosecuted by the Crown Office. So I think he was put in a position where it's entirely untenable. What the Scottish Parliament inquiry should be doing is making sure that all the information that they want, and indeed a lot of the information that they want, hasn't been provided, but it most certainly should be. And indeed, it's also the case, I think, that the parliamentary inquiry hasn't gone as far as I think the wider public are entitled to expect.
But haven't you just given the game away there, that the only difference with Alex Salmond giving a press conference versus appearing in front of the committee is that if he gives a press conference, he wouldn't be on oath, whereas in the committee he would be?
No, I think fundamentally this is about the publication of documents, because what they're saying is that the documents won't be there to be published. We have the absurd situation that there are documents circulating on social media, published on websites such as The Spectator down south, that the Scottish Parliament is saying they can't publish.
Well, but hang on, just let me pick you up on those documents, because actually the people who have authored those documents have a right to privacy, don't they? As Sue Ruddock, the SNP's chief operating officer, made clear.
Well, people have a right to privacy. Ms Ruddock seems to have decided to abandon that of her own free will. I was involved as a Justice Secretary in bringing in the legislation that's provided for all this. But let's be quite clear, many of the texts and many of the documents being referred to are nothing to do with the protection of the anonymity of the witnesses. They're all about protecting those who seem to be, perhaps, potentially involved in a conspiracy that would have seen a former First Minister face a considerably lengthy jail sentence.
Well, if we just stand back for a minute, isn't this really, you know, Alex Salmond is intent on protecting himself, fair enough, but in doing so, doesn't he risk sabotaging the party?
Well, let's be quite clear, this is entirely unedifying, I think, for the Scottish Parliament and indeed for Scotland as an institution.
Unedifying for the SNP too, though.
Well, yes, I'm minded of an incident in Ireland in the early 1980s when I think the late Conor Cruise O'Brien described it as the acronym GUBU, grotesque, unbelievable, bizarre and unprecedented. That was when a serial killer or double murderer was found in the home of the Attorney General. This is equally bizarre, unprecedented, inexplicable, but we require to address it. What we cannot do is wash it under the carpet. To be able to go forward, to maintain the credibility that we have to have openness and transparency. That's what the Scottish Parliament's about. And if the Scottish Parliament Committee cannot deliver it, then it will have to be a judge-led inquiry.
Well, how much trouble do you think Nicola Sturgeon is in over all of this?
Well, I don't know. That's for her and that's for the committee. What I can say is that the cause of independence transcends any one individual party, because there's more than one political party espouses the cause of independence, even within the Scottish Parliament and more widely. It's also the situation that the cause of independence and the independence campaign is much wider than those of us, such as myself, who are involved in a political party. So exactly the same as in Ireland, it has gone through the likes of the fall of Charles Stewart Parnell or even the execution of key players. It has managed to deliver its own independence. The cause of independence to go forward must be built on solid foundations, and that's why we have to have openness and transparency.
But your supporters are looking forward to the Holyrood elections in May. They're looking forward to potential second referendum on independence. That's what they want. And they see senior figures within the party scrapping amongst themselves. It's a terrible sight, isn't it?
Well, I think it's unedifying for any political organisation. Nobody would choose to, but this is the situation we find ourselves in, and that's why we're required to address it. But equally, part of the debate that's ongoing at the present moment, that Joanna Cherry, for example, has been pivotal in, is how we're actually going to be able to deliver that referendum. Because many of us in the SNP take Boris Johnson at his word. He has said there isn't going to be a second Scottish independence referendum, or not for some considerable time, indeed decades. We therefore think that attitudes have to change, strategy has to be developed, and indeed, because of the urgency being faced as businesses melt down due to the folly and stupidity of Brexit, that we have to ensure that the Scottish people have their opportunity to decide on independence in this May's election. Just briefly, you mentioned Joanna Cherry there. Do you see her as a leader of the future? Well, there's no challenge to the leader at the present moment, but I've said, and I'm on record as saying, Joanna is a potential future leader. There are others within the Scottish Parliament who have also been touted as a potential future leader. So we are where we are, but what we're required to do is to have openness and to remember that the cause of independence is bigger than any one individual. Ireland's independence was delivered despite the fall of Charles Stewart Parnell, and whatever happens within the SNP, the cause of independence will come. Kenny McCaskill, thanks very much for joining us.